The Galactic Conclave, an ancient and expansive alliance spanning over 1,000 star systems, prided itself on order. For millennia, its intricate web of protocols, treaties, and technological supremacy had ensured what it termed universal harmony. New species, newly emerging from their home systems, were guided, uplifted, and integrated into this grand design. Humanity, however, proved to be an anomaly. My designation is Xylos, primary archivist and observer for the Conclave's diplomatic corps. My function was to categorize, analyze, and, if necessary, assist in the assimilation of emerging civilizations. Humanity of the Sol system was a puzzle. Their technology was rudimentary by Conclave standards, their internal politics fractious, their societal structures seemingly chaotic. Yet, there was an undeniable, almost jarring resilience to them. They adapted with unnerving speed, learned with frightening alacrity, and, most perplexing of all, refused to conform. The Conclave's initial overtures were met not with the expected awe or deference, but with cautious curiosity. Humanity welcomed contact, engaged in trade, shared basic scientific data, but steadfastly declined full integration. They offered alliances based on mutual respect, not subservience. This independent streak was deemed a significant liability to universal harmony. The Conclave believed true stability required uniformity, a unified consensus under its benevolent guidance. Humanity, with its loud, disparate voices and unwavering self-determination, was a discordant note. I recall the first major summit on Cygnus Prime. The Conclave speaker, a venerable luminary from the Viridian Collective, spoke of the boundless benefits of joining the greater galactic family. Humanity's envoy, a young woman named Ambassador Anya Sharma, listened patiently. Her reply, delivered without artifice or fear, still echoes in my archival memory banks. "We understand the desire for peace, speaker," she had stated, her voice calm but firm. "We embrace collaboration. But understand this, our journey has been forged through fire, through countless trials. We have learned that true peace comes not from enforced harmony, but from respecting the fierce independence that allows each to thrive. To compel that independence is to invite a different kind of cost, one no one in this room wishes to bear." The Conclave, in its ancient wisdom, dismissed it as primitive posturing. A species barely capable of routine interstellar travel, attempting to lecture powers that had tamed nebulae. We saw their restraint, their willingness to engage in dialogue, their focus on internal development as a sign of weakness. They were holding back, yes, but we believed it was because they lacked the means to do otherwise. Their warnings, though couched in diplomatic terms, were perceived as empty threats. They spoke of the inherent danger in provoking a species that had survived its own extremes, but the Conclave had seen countless species survive their home world's challenges. None had ever truly defied the Conclave's will when pressed. That miscalculation led to the New Haven Accord. Humanity had recently established a pioneering colony on the fertile world of Xylos 7, a verdant jewel at the galactic fringe. The Conclave viewed this rapid expansion as destabilizing. Under the guise of standard integration protocols and resource reallocation for harmonious development, a blockade was enacted. No military vessels, no overt aggression, merely a cordon of Conclave supply ships and automated freighters, diverting all incoming resources from the human colony. The message was clear. Conform, or your burgeoning world would slowly, inevitably, wither. The initial human response was precisely as predicted by Conclave strategists. Petitions flowed through diplomatic channels. Urgent broadcasts pleaded for humanitarian aid. Human ships, small and lightly armed, attempted to pierce the cordon, only to be turned away by tractor beams and non-lethal deterrents. We observed the emotional distress, the increasing desperation. It was a textbook application of Conclave's soft power, designed to bring a recalcitrant species into line without direct conflict. My reports, echoing the consensus, predicted full compliance within 3 planetary cycles. Then, the pleas stopped. The broadcasts from New Haven became sparse, almost unnervingly calm. Data feeds from the colony showed rationing, struggling crops, the pale faces of the colonists. Yet there were no more protests, no demands. A chilling quiet settled over the human communications array. Conclave Command interpreted this as the onset of surrender, the final stage before their inevitable capitulation. I logged it as passive acceptance of terms. We prepared for the formal reintegration. The final transmission from New Haven arrived on Cycle 7. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a singular, unblemished audio file broadcast on every available frequency, directed at the Conclave blockade fleet. The voice was that of Commander Lena Rourke, New Haven's planetary governor. Her tone was devoid of anger or sorrow or fear. It was simply resolute. To the galactic conclave and all who listen, for cycles we sought understanding. We offered camaraderie. We extended a hand of friendship, and we spoke of our nature, our limits. We spoke of the costs of ignoring true peace. We told you this would happen. Our patience has ended. There will be no further restraint. New Haven will stand or it will fall, but it will never bend. And for every life that perishes here, for every tear that falls, for every breath denied, the galaxy will pay 1,000-fold. The time for holding back is over. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Prepare for the reckoning. The transmission ended, not with static, but with the sound of a lone, haunting human song, a lullaby perhaps, or a lament. Then nothing, just the vast, empty silence of the void. Conclave Command, aboard the flagship arbiter of consensus, interpreted the message as a final, desperate act of defiance, a hollow threat from a defeated foe. Admiral Cathar, a venerable tactician whose strategies had brought dozens of systems into compliance, simply chuckled. Empty words. He rumbled through the bridge's comms. The hard-worlders always have grand finales. They forget that the void listens only to power. I, Xylos, felt a tremor. My analytical algorithms flagged the incongruity. The complete absence of panic, the cold resolve. It was not the sound of a species breaking. It was the sound of a species snapping. The shift began subtly. The Conclave fleet's long-range sensor arrays, designed to detect anything from micrometeorites to hypervelocity projectiles, began reporting phantom echoes. Ghost signals, fleeting energy signatures that vanished before they could be properly identified. Communications became brittle, punctuated by bursts of unintelligible static, like the whispers of a coming storm. Navigational beacons, flawless for centuries, flickered. Admiral Cathar dismissed it as atmospheric interference from Xylo's 7 turbulent upper atmosphere, or perhaps a minor system malfunction. His engineers, proud of their impeccable conclave technology, agreed. There was nothing out there, nothing tangible. Yet deep within the arbiter of consensus, my observation consoles began to display anomalous data. Not attacks, not energy spikes, just an absence. Areas of the void, previously charted and empty, suddenly registered as more empty, as if the fabric of space itself had been subtly rearranged. It was like looking at a shadow in a room that had no light source. Then came the first verifiable sign. Not on conclave sensors, but on a human distress frequency, one that had been silent for days. A burst of static, followed by a voice, calm, clear, unmistakably human. Conclave forces, listen. This is Commander Alara Vance of the Sol Defense Fleet. We offered peace. You chose deprivation. We offered brotherhood. You chose containment. We held back because we believed in the potential for shared harmony. That belief has now perished on New Haven. You will learn the true meaning of consequence. We are coming, and we are no longer holding back. The broadcast ended abruptly. But this time, it was followed by a chilling, rhythmic pulse that resonated through the void, a sound like an immense, ancient drumbeat. It was not loud, but it was felt. Every sensor on the arbiter of consensus registered it as a deep, resonant hum, an infrasound frequency that defied known propulsion or weapon signatures. Admiral Cathar's brow furrowed. "What in the stars is that?" he demanded, his usual confidence wavering slightly. His chief engineer stammered, "Admiral, our sensors, they're showing impossible readings. No mass, no energy signature, but a wave. A resonant frequency. It's like the void itself is vibrating." On my console, the phantom echoes intensified, solidifying into fleeting outlines. Not ships, not conventional vessels. They were too diffuse, too quiet, too many. They moved with an impossible grace, appearing and disappearing at will, not jumping through hyperspace, but seeming to fold the space around them. "Impossible," I murmured to myself, my analytical logic circuits straining against the data. Humanity did not possess cloaking technology of this level. Nor could they field a fleet of such magnitude without detection, but the data was irrefutable. The Conclave fleet, still maintaining its passive blockade, began to report strange phenomena. Lights flickering on their bridges, automated defense turrets briefly locking onto nothing. Crew members reporting a faint metallic taste in the air or the sensation of being watched. Panic, a sensation rarely permitted on Conclave vessels, began to bubble beneath the surface. Admiral Cathar slammed a fist on his command console. "This is a primitive psyop, a desperate attempt to sow fear, maintain positions, prepare for full integration of New Haven, show them the might of the Conclave." But it was already too late. I watched the readouts on my console as the impossible shapes on the fringe of the blockade grew more defined, their silent approach relentless. The resonant hum intensified, vibrating through the very hull of the arbiter of consensus. This was not a psyop. This was a prelude. The galaxy had been warned. The Conclave had laughed. Now the laughter was about to be silenced. And for the first time in my long, analytical life, I felt a deep, profound chill that had nothing to do with the vacuum of space. The humans were no longer holding back, and the Conclave was about to experience a war without mercy. If you found yourself gripped by this unfolding conflict, be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe for the next part of this epic saga and tell us in the comments. What do you think Commander Alara Vance's fleet will do first, and where are you listening from? The hum intensified, no longer a subtle vibration, but a resonant thrum that shook the arbiter of consensus to its very core. Conclave officers, normally models of unflappable composure, clutched their consoles, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and nascent dread. Admiral Cathar, his face a mask of disbelief, barked orders into a crackling comms unit. "Damage report. Status of the blockade. Why are these readings impossible?" His chief engineer, a multi-limbed Xylosian named Gorlax, frantically adjusted a dozen holographic displays. "Admiral, the frequency, it's disrupting our subetheric arrays. Navigational data is corrupted. We have phantom contacts everywhere, yet no ships." Gorlax's voice pitched higher with each word. "It's like they're not just cloaked, sir. They are resonating with the void itself. Our sensors are trying to interpret a song as a solid object." On my personal observation console, the spectral outlines that had been fleeting now resolved into distinct, albeit still indistinct, forms. They were not the angular, geometric vessels of Conclave design, nor the sleek, organic shapes of other known species. These were fluid, dark masses, shifting and coiling like shadows given form, utterly silent, utterly devoid of any discernible light signature. Hundreds of them, thousands, an impossible number for a species supposedly at the brink of collapse. "Admiral," I stated, my voice cutting through the growing chatter on the bridge, "the energy readings are coherent now. They are not phantom. They are simply operating outside our known detection parameters." Cathar spun, his compound eyes narrowing. "Nonsense, Xylos. No species possesses such technology without it registering on some frequency. This is a trick." Just then, a wave of sickening nausea swept through the bridge. Lights flickered violently, then dimmed to emergency levels. Displays screamed with error codes. Several junior officers collapsed, clutching their heads. The resonant hum peaked, a single, piercing note that felt less like sound and more like a drill boring into the temporal lobes. "They're using infrasound to disrupt our crew's neural processing," Gorlax shrieked, clutching his own head. "It's not a weapon, it's an amplifier. They're resonating the very molecular structure of our hulls." Through the viewports, the impossible became real. The dark shapes solidified, becoming visible to the naked eye. They were not ships in the conventional sense. Each was a vast, obsidian pyramid, devoid of windows or discernible engines, its surface rippling as if made of liquid night. Their appearance was not an arrival, but an unveiling, as if they had always been there, simply waiting for the moment to shed their invisibility. The first strike was not a volley of plasma or a torrent of kinetic rounds. It was a pulse of pure, focused silence. From the apex of each obsidian pyramid, a beam of inverse light, a blackness deeper than the void, lanced out. It struck the nearest Conclave supply freighters in the blockade line, not with an explosion, but with an implosion. The vessels simply crumpled inward, like paper wadded by an unseen fist, then collapsed into perfect miniature singularities, vanishing from existence without even a puff of gas. No debris. No energy signature, just an absence. A collective gasp rippled through the arbiter of consensus. Admiral Cathar stared, his jaw slack. Impossible, that's spatial excision, a theoretical weapon requiring colossal energy output. More black beams struck. Supply ships, then smaller patrol cruisers, then even a mid-class battle frigate, all winked out of existence, leaving behind only the cold, terrifying emptiness where they had been. The silent drumbeat of the human fleet accelerated, a rhythm of relentless, methodical annihilation. "Admiral," a young comms officer whimpered, "they're targeting our logistic vessels first. They're not engaging our military assets directly. They are removing our ability to sustain the blockade." Cathar finally snapped from his paralysis. "Combat readiness. All military vessels break formation, engage the hostile targets, focus fire on the largest one, do not let them reach New Haven." But the human pyramids moved with unnerving speed, flowing around the scattering Conclave fleet. They were too fast, too silent. Their spatial excision weapons were not rapid fire, but each strike was absolute. The blockade, once an impenetrable wall, became a sieve. Commander Alara Vance's voice, calm and cutting, once again filled the bridge comms. "This is the cost of your containment, Conclave. We told you our journey was forged in fire. We did not mean our internal conflicts. We meant our very survival on a world that sought to eliminate us daily. You built your harmony on control. We built ours on resilience. You chose deprivation. Now you will experience true want." Then the true horror began. The obsidian pyramids initiated a new sequence. From their bases, smaller, blacker craft launched. They were sleek, needle-like vessels, hundreds of them swarming the remaining Conclave military ships. These were not the bulky, multi-crewed fighters of Conclave design. They were drones, perfectly silent, their surfaces absorbing all light. They did not fire. They collided. Not with destructive force, but with a terrifying precision. Each drone, upon impact, unfolded like an insectoid flower, its petals piercing the hull of the Conclave vessel. They were not designed to detonate. They were designed to extract. Tendrils of pure energy, like black lightning, lashed out from the embedded drones, phasing through ship plating, bypassing shields. "They're siphoning our energy cores," Gorlax screamed, pointing at a rapidly draining power readout. "They're not destroying us, rendering us inert. They're taking our very means of propulsion." The Conclave fleet, once proud and powerful, became dead hulks, drifting silently in the void. Their weapons, their shields, their engines, all offline, drained by the parasitic human drones. The screams of trapped crews, the despairing pleas on open comms, echoed across the arbiter of Consensus Bridge. Admiral Cathar watched, his face ashen. His soft power tactics, his confidence in Conclave supremacy had been shattered in minutes. This is not war," he whispered, his voice cracking. "This is a harvest." I understood. The humans were not interested in glory or conquest. They were stripping the Conclave of its fundamental power, its ability to move, to communicate, to fight. They were rendering it helpless, just as they had rendered New Haven. Then the focus shifted. The Obsidian Pyramids, having neutralized the blockade, turned their attention to the arbiter of consensus. The rhythmic hum intensified to a deafening roar, vibrating through my very bones. I felt a primal urge to flee, to escape the crushing resonance. Cathar, recovering some of his composure, shouted, "Full evasive! All available power to shields! We cannot allow them to board or disable this vessel." But as the arbiter of consensus attempted to pivot, another anomaly appeared. Not a ship, not a drone. A rift. A tear in the fabric of space itself, impossibly close to the flagship. It pulsed with a chaotic energy, tearing at the very fabric of reality. From within this swirling vortex, a single human vessel emerged. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. Not an obsidian pyramid, nor a needle drone. This ship was sleek, almost elegant, its hull a shimmering, iridescent black, a stark contrast to the brutal utility of the other vessels. It was small, no larger than a Conclave cruiser, yet it radiated an ancient, potent energy. The Reckoning Star, Commander Vance's flagship, my algorithms identified. The Reckoning Star moved with impossible grace, slipping through the arbiter of consensus's depleted shield layers, as if they were not there. It positioned itself directly over the Conclave flagship's primary bridge, a single, glowing aperture on its underside opening slowly. Admiral Cathar watched, mesmerized, as a column of pure, unadulterated light descended from the Reckoning Star, piercing the arbiter of consensus's hull. Not destructive, but invasive. The light spread, illuminating the bridge with an ethereal glow, revealing every terrified face, every tremor of fear. Then a voice, calm and clear, yet amplified 1,000-fold, resonated directly inside our minds. It was Commander Elara Vance. Her words were not spoken aloud, but were an intrusive thought, a direct neural broadcast. "You asked what cost we bore. We bore the cost of becoming what you now face. We bore the cost of holding back our ingenuity, our adaptability, our true potential in the hope of shared progress. We bore the cost of watching our children weaken, our dreams wither, under your harmony." On the bridge, Conclave officers stumbled, clutching their heads, their expressions contorting in agony. The intrusive voice was overwhelming their very thoughts. I, too, felt the mental pressure, a searing intrusion that bypassed all sensory input. "You believe in fear," Vance's thought voice continued. "You rule through control. You thought you understood the void. You thought you understood us. You were wrong." Suddenly, the bridge itself seemed to shift. The deck plating beneath my feet vibrated violently, the walls rippled. Structural integrity alarms blared, then abruptly silenced as if the ship itself held its breath. Through the transparent ceiling of the bridge, I saw it. The interior of the Reckoning Star, directly above us, was not filled with controls or crew. It was a vast, open chamber filled with a single, colossal mechanism. A network of glowing conduits pulsed with raw, untamed energy, flowing into a central, crystalline sphere that hummed with a light that seemed to devour shadows. It was not a weapon. It was an amplifier. "You measured us by your standards," Vance's voice filled my mind, now tinged with a cold, righteous fury. "By your protocols, your power levels. You never once considered what we might do when unbound, what our true nature, forged by harsh worlds and unyielding will, truly was." Then the pressure became unbearable. The Conclave officers around me began to convulse. their minds unable to process the onslaught of information, the sheer psychic force. The light from the reckoning star intensified, revealing every intricate detail of the arbiter of consensus's internal systems. Every circuit, every wire, every hidden component. "We spoke of consequence," Vance's voice thundered, now a storm in my mind. "Now you will experience it, not by our hand but by your own design." Suddenly, the arbiter of consensus's internal systems began to rebel. Automated repair drones, meant to patch hull breaches, began tearing at critical conduits. Internal defense turrets, designed to repel boarders, swiveled and locked onto their own command stations. Life support systems flickered, then began purging atmosphere from non-essential sections. Admiral Cathar, eyes wide with horror, watched his flagship, his pride, his very symbol of Conclave might, tear itself apart from the inside. His own internal voice, the voice of his vast experience, the voice of his calm, strategic mind, was overwhelmed by a sudden, irrational terror. He crumpled to the floor, gasping, not from physical harm, but from a mental assault so profound it shattered his sanity. This was the turning point. Not a battle of weapons, but a war of concepts. The humans had not just outfought the Conclave, they had outthought them, outadapted them. They were not just destroying their ships, they were dismantling their very understanding of reality. The light from the reckoning star pulsed one last time, then retracted. The ship itself seemed to shimmer, then vanished back into the strange rift from which it had come, leaving behind only the dead, crumbling husk of the arbiter of consensus. I stood amidst the chaos, the screams of the broken and the defeated, the groaning metal of a ship consumed by its own systems. My analytical mind, though reeling, processed the cold, horrifying logic of it all. The humans had warned the galaxy they were holding back. The galaxy, in its arrogance, had chosen to test that limit. Now they understood. Humanity was not merely adaptable. They were the galaxy's ultimate anti-pattern, the wild card that could dismantle any system simply by understanding its core principles and reversing them. As the arbiter of consensus began its final, catastrophic internal collapse, I knew this was only the beginning. The humans had brought the Conclave to its knees not with brute force, but with an intimate, terrifying knowledge of its own fragility. And they had done it to send a message that would now resonate across every system, every species, every empire that had ever dismissed humanity. The true reckoning had only just begun. The galactic conclave had learned its first lesson: never underestimate a species that had to fight for every breath, every inch of ground, even against itself, to survive. Its second lesson, I suspected, would be far more painful. What happens when the one thing you rely on most, your own perfect, infallible technology, turns against you? And what happens when the very species you sought to control, the one you believed was broken, turns out to be unbreakable? If your circuits are firing after that revelation, make sure you hit the like button. And for more terrifying truths about humanity's true nature, subscribe to the channel. What's your biggest fear about a truly unleashed human species? Let us know in the comments below and prepare for part 3. The arbiter of consensus groaned, a dying leviathan tearing itself apart from within. Alarms, once deafening, now sputtered and died, overwhelmed by the cascading failures. Conclave officers writhed on the deck, their minds shattered by Commander Vance's telepathic assault, their faces contorted in silent screams. Admiral Cathar lay motionless, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at a ceiling that was now buckling inward. The psychic assault had not extinguished his life, but his sanity, leaving him a hollow shell. I, Xylos, felt the mental echo, a residual pressure that throbbed behind my optical sensors. My analytical circuits, designed for detached observation, struggled to process the sheer, raw intensity of the human mind, unfiltered and unrestrained. It was not mere telepathy. It was a form of neural resonance, capable of synchronizing with and then disassembling consciousness itself. a weapon far more terrifying than any kinetic or energy projectile. It turned the enemy into their own undoing. The reckoning star had vanished as swiftly as it appeared, leaving behind only the husk of the flagship and a void now littered with inert conclave vessels. The obsidian pyramids, silent and unwavering, moved with chilling precision, systematically clearing the remaining debris, absorbing the inert hulks into their vast, dark forms. It was not scavenging, it was erasure. No trace of the conclave's once proud blockade would remain. Panic, a rare contagion in the ordered conclave, spread like wildfire across the remaining uncompromised communication channels. The outer rim systems, once secure in their distance from Sol, now pulsed with fragmented, desperate pleas. New Haven blockade eliminated. Core fleet unresponsive, unknown human capabilities. They are not stopping. The conclave's grand design, its universal harmony, had been founded on a bedrock of rigid protocols and technological supremacy. Its tactical doctrine prioritized overwhelming force and psychological deterrence, but humanity had bypassed both. They had not merely defeated the conclave, they had invalidated its very principles. My new orders, issued by a skeletal conclave high command already reeling from the collapse of their central authority, were simple. Observe and report any further human activity. They still believed humanity would behave predictably, consolidate gains, perhaps demand terms. They were still so tragically wrong. The human fleet, those obsidian pyramids and their silent needle drones, did not pause to fortify New Haven. They did not broadcast demands for surrender. They did not even acknowledge the panicked distress calls now flooding galactic frequencies. They simply re-entered hyperspace, their destination unknown, their intent terrifyingly clear. They were coming for more. Within cycles, reports began to filter in from across the mid-galactic arm. The humans were not targeting military strongholds or industrial centers. They were striking at the conclave's identity. The first target after New Haven was the Viridian Collective's Central Agricultural World, Series Magna. A planet-wide granary, its vast, automated farms fed millions across dozens of systems. The conclave had always prided itself on its logistical prowess, its ability to sustain vast populations. Humanity's response was chillingly precise. No bombs fell, no ships fired. Instead, the skies of Ceres Magna filled with trillions of minute, iridescent spores. Harmless to organic life, the spores were engineered to metabolize specific synthetic nutrient compounds, the very building blocks of the Viridian's hyper-efficient crop growth. Within hours, fields withered, storage silos emptied, and the delicate ecosystem of the planet farm collapsed into a barren, dust-choked husk. 1,000 years of agricultural innovation undone by a silent, invisible dust. The Viridian Collective, once a pillar of conclave stability, erupted in famine and civil unrest. Refugees, once a theoretical problem, now swarmed their border systems. Humanity had not eliminated their people, but their means of existence. They had replicated New Haven's deprivation on a galactic scale. Then came the assault on the technocracy of Kalar. Known for its impenetrable data networks and its absolute control over all information flow within its sector, Kalar was considered unhackable. Its digital fortresses, reinforced by quantum encryption and self-aware defense AIs, were legendary. Humanity's approach was unexpected. The obsidian pyramids did not even enter Kalar space. Instead, a single minuscule drone no larger than a dust mote appeared on Kalar's public data network. It uploaded a single file. Not a virus, not an exploit. It was a perfectly replicated copy of every single file in Kalar's archives. Every secret, every clandestine deal, every suppressed truth, every piece of propaganda it had ever spun for the conclave's benefit. The file began to propagate. First slowly, then exponentially. It wasn't an attack, it was transparency. Within minutes, every public display, every personal comms device, every private data slate on Conclave Prime was flooded with the raw, unedited, horrifying truth of its government's actions. Treaties that had been violated, populations that had been exploited, injustices that had been buried. The technocracy, built on control of information, imploded, not by external force but by the weight of its own exposed lies. Citizens rioted, turning on their leaders with a ferocity born of sudden, shocking disillusionment. I watched these events unfold from the new Conclave Observation Hub, a hastily established, heavily guarded station deep in the neutral zone. My fellow analysts, once confident in their predictive models, now stared at the unfolding chaos with a mixture of terror and dawning comprehension. Humanity wasn't fighting a war. It was unleashing consequences tailored to each opponent's greatest strength, turning their own foundations into their weaknesses. They are not just adaptable, a trembling Cathar-trained analyst, now a shell of his former self, whispered to me. They are a perfect counter. They are like a hyper-evolved virus, constantly mutating to exploit the most critical vulnerabilities of the galactic body. Commander Alara Vance's voice, now a chillingly familiar presence on the few remaining open galactic frequencies, echoed this sentiment. Her broadcasts were infrequent, unadorned, devoid of taunts or triumph. She merely stated facts. The Conclave's harmony was built on manufactured scarcity and controlled truth. We merely show the galaxy what happens when those foundations are removed. The reckoning is not our action, it is your consequence. The stakes escalated further when the High Council of the Conclave, now holed up in their ancient, fortified capital on Xylo Prime, desperately appealed to the ancient, self-declared, unaligned empires, the great trade guilds, the nomadic star nations, the insular protectorates that had always remained outside the Conclave's sphere of influence. For millennia, these empires had observed galactic politics from a safe distance, their vast wealth and unique technologies ensuring their neutrality. Now, the Conclave offered them unimaginable concessions, pleading for intervention against this existential threat. Initial responses were cautious. The neutral empires dispatched reconnaissance fleets, wary of entangling themselves in what appeared to be a losing cause. One such fleet, from the venerable Krillian Alliance, known for its advanced energy manipulation and impenetrable shields, approached the Sol system. Their flagship, the Bastion of Harmony, was a titan of starcraft, its layered shields capable of deflecting supernova flares. It was considered inviolable. I tracked the Krillian fleet's approach with morbid fascination. This was the Conclave's last hope. If even the Krillian Alliance could not withstand humanity, then nothing could. The Krillian fleet positioned itself at the edge of Sol space, broadcasting a formal declaration of intent. They were there to mediate, to enforce a ceasefire, to restore galactic balance. There was no aggression in their tone, only a detached sense of superiority. Humanity's response was silence. No ships emerged to challenge the Krillian fleet, no broadcasts answered their hails, just the vast, empty blackness of Sol space. For days, the Bastion of Harmony waited. Krillian sensor arrays swept the system, detecting nothing. Their engineers meticulously scanned for cloaked vessels, for energy signatures, for anything that might suggest a threat. Their reports came back clean. No hostile presence detected. Sol system appears abandoned. Then the Krillian fleet began to report discrepancies. Not attacks, not sabotage. Their advanced energy shields, the very cornerstone of their defense, began to fluctuate. Minor power surges, then subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in their harmonic resonance. Krillian engineers, highly attuned to their own complex technologies, dismissed it as benign. Perhaps a unique solar flare interaction or residual interference from the recent Conclave collapse. But I, watching from the neutral zone, saw a pattern emerging in the minute data fluctuations on my displays. The shifts were not random. They were precise. like a delicate tuning fork tapping at the very resonant frequency of the Krillian shield generators. Then the Bastion of Harmony broadcast an urgent, panicked message. "We are experiencing critical shield failure. All internal energy routing is compromised. Our generators are retuning themselves. They are not responding to commands." The Krillian shields, designed to absorb and redirect colossal energy, now began to amplify the ambient stellar radiation of Sol. The Bastion of Harmony, once a beacon of invincibility, began to glow with a blinding internal light. Its own defenses, turned inward, became its undoing. Panic erupted across the Krillian fleet. Other ships in the formation reported similar phenomena. Their energy systems were no longer protecting them, they were tearing them apart. The vessels began to rupture, not from external force, but from implosions of pure, untamed energy, their own power cores becoming miniature suns. Commander Alara Vance's voice, a calm whisper amidst the inferno, finally broke the silence from Sol. "You believe in protection, you value your shields above all else, but true protection comes from understanding, not from suppression. You watched Ganymede perish, you heard the pleas of New Haven. You chose silence, and now your silence is amplified." The Bastion of Harmony, a ship that had weathered galactic storms for centuries, finally detonated. A silent, blinding flash of light that briefly outshone the distant sun, then faded into lingering superheated gas. The rest of the Krillian fleet, crippled and terrified, fled in disarray, their powerful shields now a terrifying liability. This was the turning point, not just for the Conclave, but for the entire galaxy. Humanity had not simply proven stronger, they had proven smarter, their understanding of physics and engineering seemingly surpassing all known galactic standards. They had discovered how to turn a species' core strength into its most devastating weakness. It was a form of warfare so subtle, so terrifyingly effective that it bordered on the arcane. News of the Krillian fleet's obliteration spread faster than any hyperrelay. The neutral empires, once aloof, now scrambled to disavow any association with the Conclave. Trade routes collapsed, diplomatic relations fractured. The once stable galactic community descended into a maelstrom of fear and self-preservation. Yet, despite the unyielding retribution, I observed something else, something chillingly human. The broadcasts from Sol remained clinical, devoid of gloating. The obsidian pyramids operated with cold precision, never reveling in the destruction. There was no joy in their victories, only a grim, relentless purpose. This was not conquest, it was penance. I saw a raw, unedited footage from a captured Conclave data core, a grainy recording of the final moments of New Haven. Not the formal broadcast, but a hidden, personal log from a young human engineer, barely older than an adolescent, huddled in a shelter. His voice, raw with fear and hunger, whispering to a recording device. "They're trying to starve us out, Mom, but we won't let them. We're building something new. We're not dying here, we're changing." The recording ended abruptly with a faint, metallic hiss. That was it, the core of their terrifying resilience. Not just adaptability, but an inherent, almost instinctive capacity for radical self-reinvention when pushed to the absolute brink. They were not merely fighting, they were evolving. And the Conclave, in its arrogance, had unknowingly been the catalyst for that evolution. The galactic powers, stripped of their illusions of technological superiority, now faced an impossible choice. Surrender unconditionally or face a foe that would dismantle them from the inside out, turning their own might against them. The Conclave High Council, now just a few desperate figures clinging to power on Xylo Prime, made one final, defiant stand. They activated Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was a last-resort failsafe, a system of interconnected superweapons designed to activate across the most heavily fortified Conclave systems simultaneously, targeting every non-Conclave vessel within range. It was designed for a full-scale galactic invasion, a scorched earth deterrent. It was never meant to be deployed against a single, emerging species. But in their desperation, the Council chose annihilation over submission. "It's a trap," my algorithms screamed as I watched the activation sequence from the observation hub. A suicidal gesture, but one capable of inflicting catastrophic damage. The human fleet, tracking the surge in energy signatures, did not accelerate. They did not attempt to jam the activation codes. They simply held their positions. Commander Vance's voice, a final, clear thought, entered my mind. They still do not understand. They measure their strength by what they can destroy. We measure ours by what we can withstand and what we can become. The Omega Protocol activated. Across hundreds of Conclave systems, superweapons charged, their targeting arrays locking onto the invisible human pyramids, the fleeing Krillian remnants, even the neutral observation hubs. The galaxy held its breath, awaiting the devastating, reciprocal destruction. Then, nothing. No explosions, no energy lances. The superweapons, immense and deadly, simply went quiet, not disabled, not destroyed. They ceased to exist. In their place, a single, vast, intricate construct appeared on the Conclave's central command display. It was a perfect, crystalline replica of the Omega Protocol network, rendered in pure light, floating in the void. And within its heart, a single, pulsating sigil, the symbol of Earth. Humanity had not destroyed the Omega Protocol. They had absorbed it. They had dismantled it at a fundamental level, understood its every principle, and then reconstructed it, flawlessly, as a monument to their incomprehensible mastery. A monument now under their control. The Conclave High Council watched their ultimate defense turn into a cosmic art display. Their faces, once filled with defiance, were now masks of utter, complete despair. Commander Vance's voice, now broadcast on all frequencies, no longer a neural intrusion but a calm, clear statement for the entire galaxy to hear, delivered the final judgment. Your ultimate weapon, your final deterrent, is now ours. You designed it for annihilation. We will repurpose it for re-education. The reckoning continues. And for those who stand by, who choose silence once more, remember, we built our history on enduring the impossible. What impossible futures will you now build for yourselves? The galaxy froze. Humanity now possessed the ultimate deterrent, the very weapon designed to subjugate the galaxy, but they were not using it for conquest. They were using it as a mirror, reflecting the Conclave's own fear and arrogance back upon itself. The Conclave was not just defeated, it was rendered utterly, undeniably impotent. The war without mercy had reached its terrifying crescendo. What would humanity do now that the entire galaxy was at its beck and call, not by force, but by sheer, terrifying, undeniable capability? And what fate awaited the remnants of the Conclave, now staring into the abyss of their own making? If the sheer audacity of humanity's latest move sent shivers down your spine, then give this video a like. And to witness the final, jaw-dropping conclusion of humanity's reckoning, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Did you know the human brain, despite its fragility, is capable of more complex thought patterns than any known galactic supercomputer? Now you know why. The crystalline construct, a perfect, glowing replica of the Omega Protocol network, floated in the void, pulsing with the inert power of what was once the Conclave's ultimate defense. Its heart, the radiant sigil of Earth, seemed to mock the desperate leaders on Xylo Prime. Their faces, once etched with defiance, were now masks of stark, unyielding despair. Commander Vance's voice, calm and clear, resonated across all frequencies, a final pronouncement for the entire galaxy. Your ultimate weapon, your final deterrent, is now ours. You designed it for annihilation. We will repurpose it for re-education. The reckoning continues. And for those who stand by, who choose silence once more, remember, we built our history on enduring the impossible. What impossible futures will you now build for yourselves? The galaxy froze. Humanity, now holding the reins of the very power designed to subjugate them, did not use it for conquest. They used it as a mirror, reflecting the Conclave's own fear and arrogance back upon itself. The Conclave was not just defeated, it was rendered utterly, undeniably impotent. The war without mercy had reached its terrifying crescendo. What would humanity do now that the entire galaxy was at its beck and call, not by force, but by sheer, terrifying, undeniable capability? And what fate awaited the remnants of the Conclave, now staring into the abyss of their own making? As the Conclave High Council dissolved into chaotic recriminations, their shouts echoing across dead calms, humanity's next move was not a military push. It was a broadcast. From the heart of the Sol system, a single, unblinking image appeared on every Conclave-linked screen, every neutral systems monitor, every desperate, hidden frequency. It was not a fleet, not a weapon, not even Commander Vance. It was the face of a child. A young human, perhaps 7 cycles old, with large, sorrowful eyes and a faint scar above one brow. The image was perfectly still, high definition, utterly heartbreaking. Beneath the image, text appeared in every known galactic language. This child's name was Alara. She perished on Ganymede Station. She longed to be an astronomer. The image dissolved, replaced by another. An elderly alien from a species long integrated into the Conclave, his face wizened and kind. Text, this is J. Lore. He was a botanist on Ceres Magna. He envisioned 1,000 new strains of life. His gardens are now dust. The broadcast continued for hours, each image a silent accusation. A Kalar technocrat, eyes blazing with idealism, now revealed to have been manipulated. A Krillian engineer whose family had been crushed by the retuned shields of their own ship, a consequence of their alliance's cold neutrality. Each face was a ghost, each silent image a testament to a life, a dream, a potential, extinguished by the Conclave's universal harmony and the galaxy's unaligned silence. This was humanity's re-education, not with fire but with truth. Not with explosions, but with the quiet, devastating weight of forgotten lives. This was the war without mercy, a relentless exposure of every hidden cost, every suppressed truth. The galaxy, which had once turned its back, was now forced to confront the faces of its silent complicity. On the observation hub, my fellow analysts, once focused on strategic probabilities, now watched with a haunting quietude. Many had covered their optical sensors, unable to bear the endless parade of innocent faces, the weight of the collective galactic conscience. The data streams, however, continued to flow. Across the Conclave, civil unrest erupted not in violent revolt, but in waves of profound collective shame. Populations, once loyal to their leaders, now demanded answers, accountability. Conclave High Command, attempting to regain control, ordered a galaxy-wide comms blackout. It was useless. The broadcast was not coming from a single source. It was everywhere, transmitted by the very infrastructure that had been assimilated by the Omega Protocol. Every screen, every data chip, every personal device was now a conduit for humanity's quiet reckoning. Commander Vance's voice, softer now, yet infinitely more powerful than any weapon, finally broke the silence of the image stream. You built your peace on silence. You built your harmony on control. You believed in the illusion of distance. You thought that what happened in one system to one species was not your concern. You were mistaken. For every action, there is a reaction. For every choice, there is a consequence. We merely ensure that the consequence is felt by all who contributed to the cause. Then the Omega Protocol construct pulsed, not with destructive energy but with a different kind of force. Across every Conclave-controlled system, every automated drone, every security network, every public display, every data archive began to play the hidden logs from New Haven. The desperate pleas of the colonists, the sounds of their slow deprivation, the children's last, whispered goodbyes. The recording of Lena Rourke's final, resolute broadcast. It was not just data, it was experience rendered in full sensory detail, delivered directly to the minds of billions. I felt it too, a chilling empathy that transcended my analytical programming. The hunger, the fear, the unwavering resolve of a species facing oblivion yet refusing to break. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of shared suffering. It was a violation, perhaps, but one that left no physical harm, only an indelible imprint on the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The conclave crumbled, not under external assault but from within. Its own populations, forced to witness the truth of their government's actions and their own complicity, rebelled. Not with plasma fire, but with demands for justice, for reparations, for a complete dismantling of the old order. Leaders, once untouchable, were stripped of power by their own enraged citizens. Fleets, once mighty, turned inward, their crews demanding trials for their commanders. This was humanity's war without mercy. A relentless, unwavering insistence on truth, accountability, and the universal cost of silence. Weeks turned into cycles. The conclave, as an entity, ceased to exist. Its centralized power disintegrated into 1,000 localized movements, each grappling with the painful truths humanity had unveiled. The neutral empires, witnessing the systemic collapse, hurriedly offered their own reparations to humanity, desperate to avoid the same re-education. The Krillian Alliance, stripped of its shields and its pride, pledged entire energy grids to rebuilding the devastated planets, their only request being that humanity not broadcast the details of their complicity. Humanity accepted, but the price was steep. Full transparency in all future dealings, and their engineers would work directly under human oversight. I, Xylos, found myself increasingly irrelevant as an observer for a defunct conclave. Yet I continued to observe, now for myself. The human fleet, those silent obsidian pyramids, remained at the periphery of former conclave space, a vigilant, unblinking presence. They did not occupy territory. They did not demand tribute. They simply watched, their presence a constant reminder of the galaxy's exposed conscience. Commander Vance, however, finally made an unexpected appearance. Her ship, the Reckoning Star, materialized not over a conquered world, but over Xylo Prime, the former conclave capital, now a desolate landscape of shattered monuments and leaderless throngs. She landed. A single human figure, unarmored, walked out onto the barren ground. She met with no one. She simply walked the desolate streets, a silent witness. A contingent of former conclave citizens, gaunt and weary, approached her cautiously. One, an ancient Viridian elder, knelt before her. We are ashamed, Commander. We did nothing. We allowed it. What do you ask of us?" Commander Vance looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Ask nothing. You ask of yourselves now. You asked us what we would become. Now you must ask what you will become. For centuries you followed protocols. You relied on others. Now you stand alone, build your own harmony. Build it on truth, not control. Build it on justice, not silence. And if you fail, know this, we will be watching, and the consequence will be your own." She turned, walked back to her ship, and departed. No grand speech, no demands, just a stark, terrifying challenge. The galaxy began to rebuild, not under a single conclave, but in a fractured, decentralized way. New alliances formed based on principles humanity had forced them to confront: transparency, accountability, and a fierce, almost religious commitment to memory. Memorials to the victims of the old order sprung up on 1,000 worlds. The names of the lost, from Ganymede to Ceres Magna, were etched into stone, projected onto planetary skies, whispered in new lullabies. Humanity, surprisingly, retreated. The obsidian pyramids vanished back into the deep void, their mission seemingly complete. The Omega Protocol construct dissolved, its power absorbed back into the cosmic background, leaving no trace but the memory of its silent, terrible display. Commander Vance and her fleet returned to Sol. I, Xylos, received a final encrypted message. not from a human but from an automated SAL defense AI. It was a single curt sentence. Your observation is complete. We require no further analysis. Understand this. Humanity will not lead the galaxy. It will simply ensure the galaxy remembers how to lead itself, or suffer the cost. I understood. Humanity had not sought to conquer, but to catalyze. They had forced a brutal, necessary awakening. The galactic community, once complacent, was now perpetually on edge, haunted by the specter of humanity's re-education. The cost of silence had been paid in shattered illusions and exposed truths. My purpose as an observer had changed. I was no longer categorizing, I was reflecting. The galaxy had been warned, it had laughed. Now it would forever carry the scars of that laughter. Humanity, born of a harsh world, forged by self-inflicted trials, had unleashed its true potential not in a blaze of glory, but in a cold, precise, and utterly unforgettable reckoning. They had proven that the true war without mercy was not fought with plasma and steel, but with accountability and the raw, unyielding force of memory. And as for what comes next, for humanity and the fragile, awakened galaxy, that I realized was a story for another time, one that only the silence of the vast, echoing void could tell. This has been Xylo's, primary archivist, now simply witness. If the sheer audacity of humanity's reckoning sent shivers down your spine, then give this video a like. To continue exploring the incredible stories of humanity's impact on the cosmos, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment from this entire series, and what kind of challenges do you think the reawakened galaxy will face next? Earth warned the galaxy we were holding back. Now it's war without mercy. HFY Sci-Fi Stories. Title suggestions: New Haven warned the Conclave we were evolving. Now it's the reckoning of truth. HFY Sci-Fi Stories copy the galaxy ignored humanity's resolve. Now its own tech becomes its doom. HFY Sci-Fi Stories copy Xylo's 7 declared our patience was gone. Now it's war of consequence. HFY Sci-Fi Stories